So we're going to open it to our panel for comment. I want to thank them for being here today. And I'd like to open with the photo of the day. I'm not sure if we can capture this for the cameras. Does everyone know what this is? This is the eye roll, the meme that traveled across China with the speed of light. And it's actually a good and I think a positive starting place. And what the report captures is the rich, I think a lot of the world thinks of the Great Firewall of China as this sort of black hole. And the report does accurately capture the richness of the sort of ecosystem on social media. And I hope the panel can as well. But I do think, while a lot of, this week we had the full display of the National People's Congress, the pageantry, the, row after row of communist cadres clapping politely. And then we had this meme that was totally off message, which is the eye-rolling reporter who is reacting to her colleague's obsequious propaganda question. So I do think that you can see that it is possible for information the Chinese government would prefer to remain off the internet. It's getting through. I'm going to go first to Kaiser and ask you to do a really tough question. Can you give us a short history of the internet in China leading up to social media?
No. Okay, if you can get the Overseas Press Club dates wrong, then I can get a few dates wrong. So I'll hold you. You can hold me to that same Minky stick. I'm very fortunate because I've been involved in the internet really since 1999. But we can take it back a few years before that. It was really 1994 that China made its first actual connections to what was then the World Wide Web. Sent its first email messages, made its first connections. But internet use in China was vanishingly small until really 1997. It wasn't until 96 and 97 that you could start to actually get, as an ordinary civilian in China, connection to the internet. It was dial-up. It was painfully slow. It was basically unusable. But things accelerated very, very quickly. And by the late 1990s, you started to see a lot of entrepreneurs who were starting internet plays. Many of them, I think it's really worth pointing out, this is very significant, were either returnees who had spent as much as a decade in the United States and had studied there, or they were people who were heavily Americanized, people like Jack Ma. Note also where the source of their funding came from. It was almost uniformly from American and specifically Silicon Valley venture capital outfits. So we have American-educated entrepreneurs with American money. And where did they go and list their companies when they in 1999 and 2000 when they began to list? On American capital markets. So I think this is something that we should keep in mind. It's significant. Why would a Communist Party leadership that we all know is usually determined to have a firm hold on the commanding heights of any strategically vital sector, and there was no question already back then that the consumer internet was just such a sector. Why would they allow this to be the case? That's a very interesting thing. The simple answer is they didn't move fast enough. That it moved so quickly that they had to play catch up. And so what we've seen really since, and this whole topic of censorship is really a perfect example, is kind of an ad hoc response to this force that they have always sort of been running a little bit behind. They can never get out actually in front of it. In the late 1990s, it was sort of the era of the portals. You guys remember, of course, and some of them are still around. They are mostly still around. Sina.com, for example, Sina.com, Sohu, NetEase, 163. These were the big players at the time. And they really dominated the scene for a while, until around the time of September 11th, really. By the 2001, they were all sort of sub-dollar stocks. They were in real trouble. And they were only rescued, strangely, by the phenomenon of mobile phones. These are pretty smartphones still. The fact that people would use these portals to buy ringtones and little black and white screen graphics for their phones. And unbelievably, in the year 2002, these were the best performing stocks on the NASDAQ. The three, Sina, Sohu, and NetEase were the three best performing stocks on the NASDAQ. This is also around the time that we start to see the first of BAT really start to emerge as a big player, which was Baidu, a company that I should note I worked for 6 years. They were an internet search company founded by a guy who was really a pioneer in search technology, in fact, whose basic technology for hyperlink analysis was actually cited extensively in the patent that Google filed for their own search technology. So already we're starting to see a lot of sort of cross-pollination. It was an interesting time. Soon after that, I think we can just sort of, Baidu's listing in 2005 or 6 was probably the beginning of the BAT era. Alibaba at that point, they were substantial, very large, doing mostly business to business, B2B, but they had launched also marketplaces. Taobao in 2005, 2006, it started to really overtake eBay as the dominant force in e-commerce in Chinese life. And then, of course, there was Tencent, which had a massive dominance in messaging and became also a huge player and very, very rich from internet value-added services and a lot of mobile apps as well. But I think the next sort of era that we can delineate in around the time of 2010, this is still before we saw the rise of the smartphone. By around 2010, we see social media has really sort of grabbed hold. It already started. There were a lot of precursors to social media, but it wasn't really until 2009 that we saw Weibo really sort of seize the imaginations of so many people, and it became the first really de facto public sphere in Chinese life that we'd ever seen. It was to the point where you couldn't read a news story on China that didn't dip into the pool of Weibo commentary and then offer you people with bizarre screen names, their comments on everything that was being reported. This, of course, came to kind of a screeching halt really in 2013. A lot of Weibo really lost a lot of its cool by 2013, and in the years since, we've seen a real significant crackdown on social media sort of as a platform for open political social commentary. It has really receded, and concurrently with that, of course, was the advent of smartphones. The first smartphones, of course, in 2009 or 2010 or so, when the iPhone started to become popular, and there were affordable knockoffs of that based on the Android operating system. But it really wasn't until 2012 that they became so ubiquitous that you lived or died as an internet company based on how well your smartphone strategy had performed. So it became the sine qua non for everything as the internet. And then, of course, we saw the rise of Weibo, of Weixin, of WeChat, which really, in many ways, took over in a kind of more closed-off, less public form the function of that kind of public sphere that Weibo had held before it. I think it's interesting. From most of my time in China, you heard incessantly this trope about how China was incapable of actual innovation. That we always joke that China had the C2C model, which meant copy to China. It was something that I think it was certainly very true. There was very little by way of more than not much more than just your basic business model innovation that you start to see. But the narrative flipped completely around the time that I left China in 2016. In 2015, you still had Joe Biden and Carly Fiorina going around and talking about how Chinese internet companies were incapable of actual innovation. But a year later, by 2016, we were all talking about how Chinese internet companies were out innovating American ones, and they were going to eat our lunch. And we saw just recently Michael Moritz talking. So it's a really strange moment to be in right now, where we're very concerned about Chinese internet companies now actually out innovating American ones.